So since our last episode, I've kind of been toying with the concept of thinking about how has our growing faith kind of shaped how we weather storms and overcome those battles when we do encounter them. And I was trying to reflect on that and kind of think about what are some key moments or key takeaways that I've kind of noticed so far in the journey for us. What do you think? Have you thought about that?
Yeah. I mean, we have a lot of different points in our lives where it's really clear that there was a lot of uncertainty. There was a lot of, well, I wouldn't call it hopelessness, but it feels like that in the moment. But then, like, looking back, it's always there's always a formula looking back, but when you're going forward, it just feels like anything can happen. You're weighing options from one extreme to the other, but trying to find the middle path. Mm-hmm. That whole process is really taxing. And without God, I don't think we'll be able to find as much peace as we have today.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. I feel like so far in our journey, it's allowed us to have, I wouldn't say peace at the beginning when we're going through a struggle, because we're human, right? Like, we still feel all the feelings, anxiety, worry, uncertainty, but leaning on the faith throughout those moments has allowed us to come back to restoring the peace within us so we can get through those journeys. So, like, for instance, there was whenever we went to the Philippines and we got stuck in Coron on the island, there's a lot of uncertainty with that. And we didn't know what was going to happen. We didn't know how we were going to get to our next destination, where were we going to sleep for the night, like nothing. And that was really anxious.
What actually happened? Like, what's the story?
Yeah. So backstory, we went to the Philippines for our honeymoon and it was great. Part of that trip was we went to an island called Coron Island and we spent a week there. It was wonderful. Highly recommend. And then on the way out of the island, our flight got delayed and then got canceled. And it was apparently the last flight out. And it was just chaos. And there was a lot of miscommunication throughout the whole process. And so we kind of just had to stagger our way through it and kind of just go with the flow and figure it out as we went. And initially, they weren't able to really tell us much in terms of initially they made it sound like we were going to have another flight that was going to come for us. And then next thing we know, it was like, no, there's no more flights. You guys have to go to this lounge area and wait to hear additional information on where you can stay for the night, because now everyone who was on that flight is now stuck on the island, So then we go to the lounge area. They still don't formally announce where we're going to be going for the night. What's the lodging situation? And then just word of mouth, another passenger, I don't know how they found out, but they were like, oh yeah, we're going to this hotel. And I forgot the name of it already, but we're going to this hotel. They're going to be taking us there. And we're like, okay, cool. So we have lodging, apparently. That's cool. And then throughout the rest of the journey, then we're waiting to get picked up. They told us that, they were going to pick us up in a bus or something like that to take us to this hotel. And we're waiting and nothing's happening. And then again, kind of word of mouth, all of a sudden, one of the passengers happens to go outside for a second, step out, and they're like, oh, there's some vans out there. And we're like, oh, are those our vans? But again, the airline company didn't tell us anything. So then we kind of like put the pieces together and we're like, oh, okay, these vans apparently are starting to take people to the hotel. So then we just jump in a van and they took us to the hotel for the night. And they provided us with food at the hotel and everything. I mean, everything worked out, but it was just very, like, it could have been a very anxious and stressful situation. And yeah, like, I was just more so confused, I feel like, throughout the whole experience.
No, it was an anxious situation.
Yeah, it was.
They're leading us to random spots in this tiny airport. There's no more flights out. There's other people, freaking, they have to go to Bali. They have to go to this place. They have to go to that place. And they're like, yelling at the people. And you're just trying to bring and hold the peace. And people are trying to cut in line. People are trying to like push you around. And it's like, it's hard to hold your peace in there, but we know we have to do it because these poor people are just the messengers. And no one, like, there's one side of the spectrum where everybody is freaking out and no empathy. And there's our side of the spectrum, which is just like, yo, you guys got to calm down. It's going to be fine. Well, that we were speaking from a godly perspective, just like, yo, like, kind of just try to trust them. It's, they're strangers, but, at least try. They're just the messenger. They don't have any authority over our airplane getting canceled and then us having to do whatever until tomorrow.
Yeah.
But I suppose it's easier said than done if you have a full itinerary going to Bali after Coron Island and you're trying to travel to XYZ.
Yeah, like place. A lot of other people, they had like other flights that they were going to be missing, like connection flights and things like that. I mean, I will say, thankfully for us, we didn't really, yes, we had plans after that. We had another leg of the trip that we were going to be doing still in the Philippines, but on a different island in the Philippines. And, that got delayed by a day or so because of this whole ordeal. But I mean, really in that situation, I remember for me, at least, like, yes, I was anxious at times and like worried and like, what's going to happen next? Like, are we going to have this? Are we going to have that? But on the same token throughout it, I remember just kind of within myself knowing that like, God's got this. Like, everything happens for a reason. We're not going to just be stranded on the side of a road on a random island. Like, it'll be fine. We just got to kind of go with the flow and just, try our best to remain calm. Because, yeah, it was chaos. Everyone around us was like, you can feel the anxiety with the other people because they were like expressing it outwardly, versus I feel like you and I were more so anxious, maybe more so within, but also trying to just trust the process.
Well, we had experience to this point. The backstory to the backstory is we already had so much travel right before this trip. And the previous trip for your mom's 50th was, we had a delayed flight, or we were expecting a delayed flight. We took it into our own hands to try to change our flights, which we did. And without trusting that process, we witnessed God's work. It like just, I don't know how to say, like, we witnessed us walking away from God for a second and we're seeing God's plan work. AKA, we saw our first flight that we transferred off of leave, and then we were stuck on this second flight that ended up getting delayed till the next morning, and now we suffer the consequences of staying overnight. But we saw our plane leave, and we were trying to take it into our own hands to say, we got this. We don't need you, God. Like, we weren't praying in that moment. We weren't praying for the best next step. And in Coron, we could have took the next step to pray on it even more, but we didn't. We just knew in that whole circumstance, hey, God's got this. You guys are freaking out. Whatever. We're going to hold our peace. And we know how this works. If we go, like, I was I was looking up other flights already.
I was going to say,
and it was like,
momentarily, you did kind of look at the other flights. So, like, I guess what stopped you from continuing to try to pursue that?
no, it was just way too complicated and way too expensive. It was
Yeah.
stupid. But yeah. Anyways, it's hard in the moment when you cancel a flight and you're trying to get to this place or wherever, and it's hard to like trust that, you know, God's got this, because there's many other itineraries where I took it in my own hands and it worked out
Mm-hmm.
in my secular life. But
Yeah, but what
moving
about
forward-
the amount of stress that it caused when you did try to put it into your own hands?
oh, of course, it's a whole rabbit hole.
To try to make it work. You know what I'm saying? Like, I feel like, because I know a lot of people, including myself, right? Like, that in the past, yeah, I've put things in my own hands, and yeah, it does work out, but like, at what cost? You know, like, you lose your peace in the process more times than not, you know?
When I'm in the rabbit hole, I am laser focused. I'm like, yeah, finding everything and every which way to go through. And before you know it, I wasted 8 hours on the same itinerary
Yeah.
instead of just like,
And that's 8 hours that you could have spent just being in the moment,
yeah,
just being in the present, which is something that we've kind of been working on here
Yeah.
lately too.
the devil pulls you to the future and to the past. That's the only place that the devil doesn't want you to be, is in the present. That's the battleground, is your present.
Mhm.
And that's God's gift. So we're still trying to learn more
Yeah.
how to stay concrete into the present. But yeah, easier said than done. But when you do it, it works out.
Mhm.
We're humans. We worry about the future and the past, but that worry is what we're trying to
Mhm.
steer away from.
Most definitely. Yeah.
Well, we got the honeymoon. One of my points was the wedding. So just to backstory on that is we planned a wedding in North Carolina and we moved to Florida, and that's when we ended up coming back into the faith. And yeah, God be praised. Yes, we did. But in that transition, we also had to transition our wedding plans to Florida, which was a whole headache in the beginning, because we still care about our money. We still care about our values. We still care about our previous plans, our previous dreams. And doing so, yeah, we lost 20 grand in the process. But doing after canceling everything and after canceling our previous wedding, coming into our new plans, it was just like the biggest breath of fresh air that we could ever ask for. And that was God's grace, and that was God's presence, and that was us actually laying the foundation of God's rock underneath us before we get married into the most important sacrament of marriage. And if I were to do it again, I mean, we had instincts to do it in the church before, but we didn't have strong faith back then. And this whole process, it's only been a year since our move. And then it's only been like a few months since our wedding, and we're still like just getting our feet wet. We're still laying the foundation right now. And but wrestling with that is a beautiful process. It's a necessary process, and that's kind of what we're doing here, is trying to, even if we did say that story in the past, I think reiterating our stories is pretty important, because we get to tell it in a different way. We get to tell it in a different lens. We've grown a lot in the past 4 months, and comparing notes with our previous self, it's like, wow, 4 months, we can grow that much. We can show that much growth. And that's really all we got, because I suck at memorizing scripture. I suck at memorizing anything. Like, tradition. Well, not tradition, but anything in writing that the catechism or the Bible teaches, I can't recall that. But the things that we can recall are our experiences. And I think that's the most important thing. So I digress. I'm projecting now on saying the wedding story again, but I feel like I'll say it again in the future. I don't care. Because we're going to find new scripture that's going to reflect back onto our own story. It's going to be like, whoa.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think there's some validity to it too, because I've always said, like, because people always ask me, why Florida? Like, why'd you move there? Because it is very random. Like, we have no family here. We have no connections here, really, aside from, like, we do have really good friends in the area. Thankful to have them in our lives. But, we don't have, like, deep roots here, right? But really, I think it just stems from, it was God's calling for us to move down here. And it all started with, before we even moved, just praying heavily on my next journey, our next journey, and next steps with my career, and where's it going to take us, and what are we going to do? And I prayed and prayed and prayed, and, coming down here, it's what allowed us to continue to form our faith up into, where we're at now. And it's just going to continue to grow even from here. So I think it was God's way of saying, I'm going to have to, you guys need to be removed for a little bit. I got you. Trust me. And like, we're thinking like we're planning a good life, but he has a great life planned for us, and that's kind of what it's felt like since living out here.
Yeah, because we would never have probably got back into the faith if it wasn't for this journey, this Florida segue in our lives. And right now we're wrestling with trying to buy a house, doing this podcast with no like evident future with it. But the most important thing that we put first is our praise for God and our faith formation. And that's the same thing with Florida. I mean, that was just leaning back into the behind the scenes. I've never felt more sad in my life, which was crazy. That was a weird feeling, moving from having plans in September of 2024 to move in February 2025. Those 6 months, like my whole life was on pause. My mountain life of camping was axed. There's no more. I'm moving from the mountains to the beach, and I can't even start building my next life. So everything was on pause. My whole building or working on something was paused because we don't have the foundation. We don't have our house. We're just trying to figure it out. A lot of pieces are up in the air still. But at that time, we didn't have that grasp of God supporting us around us to say, hey, these things are up in the air, but I know, God, you can grab what you need, throw out what you don't need, and then send everything back down to me. Because at the end of the day, yes, everything worked out looking back, but we didn't know that back then because we weren't in our faith, and it was, stressful being secular. I don't know how we did it in the past or how anyone does it. Because like nowadays it's so easy. Well, I won't say easy, but it's like the default to ask God and the default to lean on God is so necessary, but it is easy to do, but it's also easy to protect and lean on and practice because it works. And we're so thankful it works. But back then it's like 6 months of sadness because I don't know what the next steps are. If you just had God, it might be just a little bit easier. Because right now we're in the same spot. We don't know our next steps, but all we have is God and our feet to walk those next steps into the fog. But at the end of the day, God's going to clear up that fog. And we believe that because of what we've seen in the past.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, it's very true. And I think also something that's come out of this, and I say our growing faith, but really, I guess, well, it's been growing faith. And then also for me, growing in my religious life, right? Because you can have faith and then there's religion, right? It's kind of they go hand in hand, but they're also kind of separate. They're kind of different, right? There's some people that are very spiritual and they have faith, but they're lacking the religion, like the teachings and carrying out the day-to-day teachings with it. Like you can't have one without, you need both, That's what I'm getting at. And I think back then, for me, at least back then, I only had some faith, but I didn't have deep roots, which is like the tradition and the teachings of the church and that understanding behind it. So it was like surface level faith, So it's been a beautiful thing, just being able to also just grow into that space and learn more. And the more we learn, I feel like the more our hearts are opened, our minds are opened, and the more we're willing to receive God within our life day to day.
Yeah. I don't know how we would have done it without this path. We were thinking about moving to other states by ourselves, by ourselves, without any deep roots. Luckily we had a plant over there. Our buddies lived here.
Yeah.
But that was about it. They were
the mustard seed and they didn't know it. Or maybe they did. I don't know.
Yeah. So it was, they're a blessing.
Yeah.
Because we couldn't have done it without them too. But imagine if we landed in California, or if we landed in Idaho, or if we landed anywhere else, if we were thinking Colorado, there's no one there for us.
Yeah.
We're truly, taking Noah's Ark seriously. Hey, this is it. It's only us. There's no one around us. Try to build this without our friends. That influence was.
It was the push we needed when we needed it, because that's another part of it, right? You can hear things about the faith and religion and God all the time, but if you're not in the right headspace to receive it, then it's like talking to a wall, right? It's just going to bounce right off and nothing gets absorbed, no change happens. So I think for us, we were in that moment where we were receptive to receiving his word.
But that, and also just imagine the rabbit hole of where we were at before was, imagine if we move forward with our marriage, half-baked, a Catholic and a Protestant Catholic, because you were leaning more Protestant back then, and I was leaning more secular, but I was Catholic. You were Catholic, but you're leaning Protestant.
Mm-hmm.
And just taking a look at our life back then, it was I don't know when we mentioned it, but the household was peaceful 20% of the time, and then 80% of the time we're kind of really wrestling with stupid stuff.
Yeah.
How to cook, how to load the dishwasher, how to clean, who's doing what, how many, I was weighing household duties. Okay, let's split it half and half. It's that's not really a teamwork.
Yeah.
There was no balance. There was just at least in my eyes, it was I was too much, with all those characteristics listed. I'm just driving myself to redline 120%, 200% of the time, 200% of my effort all the time. It's
Yeah.
God bless that parallel universe where that happened, because that, just looking back, I don't know how we would have done it.
Yeah, I don't know. And I mean, yeah, so in the household, there was more stress. And I think also like we didn't have a good compass. Like it was like you were working your job, I was starting my career off. We were doing fine financially. We had like, stability, all the things that growing up people tell you should work for, right? We had that, but we weren't happy. Like we were happy, but I feel like we had so much unrest for any little thing. Like, at the time you were really stressed out about your then journey with, camping and your truck and all that stuff and pursuing that journey. And then I was just super stressed out with my work and not knowing how to handle those stresses appropriately. And then I would just be in a bad mood sometimes and just feeling just frustrated and just, not a lighthearted, happy person like I would want to be. Like now, like, of course, we still have stressors down here. It's not like everything's, rainbows all the time, but we know how to, I feel like we approach the situations and the stressors differently. Like for me in the workplace, yes, I still have stresses at work, but like even during those stresses, like I take a moment, I pause and I pray and I ask God to help me. And before I go into work, I pray for it to be a good day. I pray for my coworkers. I pray for those who I'm going to interact with in that day, and pray for myself, for me to have patience and empathy and understanding. And, I pray for all those things. And I think just going through life without having that structure of God being with you and acknowledging and receiving him in your life every day, life gets really hard, and life feels a lot harder than it actually is when you don't have God with it. That's just been my experience so far. Like when I think back to like stress back then versus stress now.
Yeah. But then you had Protestant roots back then ish.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the difference between back then and now, even if you were kind of Protestant leaning and you could still pray if you wanted to, the problem was I was leaning secular with Catholic roots, but I was like 95% secular and 5% Catholic, or like religious practice speaking. But even in any marriage, if one person is not even thinking about God, there's no way you can find your peace with God if both man and woman, husband and wife, are not aligned on that goal. Because I don't know, if I can remember, you would pray to God, but only in like the last resort kind of circumstances. And that's not the blueprint. That's not the playbook.
Mm-hmm.
The playbook is put praise for God first, put Judah first, and go about your day, go about your battle.
Yeah. I mean, it does make a difference that now we're aligned when it comes to our spirituality and our overarching goal, right? Like now, like literally our goal is to get each other into heaven, right? Like that's the whole point of the sacrament of marriage. And it definitely makes a difference, like, because now it's like, even if, let's say, like I'm struggling, I can turn to you and then you can help to lift us up spiritually and guide us in more prayer and vice versa. Like, if when you have your moments that you're struggling, like I can sense that too. And like we work to get realigned a lot more frequently. So it's not like lopsided. Like back then it was, like you said, like it's like it's tough when you're not on the same page. It really is. So, yeah.
You've come a long way.
Yeah.
And yeah, hope other couples can figure their own path out too, because as much as we want to help people, they got to help themselves. And for us too, like for two Catholics, I mean, maybe your side of the family is a little bit more muddy, but my side of the family is like 90% mostly Catholic. And like, I mean, yeah, like everyone respects boundaries and stuff, but yeah, even with those Catholic roots, I still walked away from God every single day.
No.
Godparents, awesome Catholic house. They go to mass every weekend. We say grace every meal, but then I leave the house and I would just go my way. Which it's like some of the craziest stories of why it's crazy that we're here, that I'm here, is I should have died twice. I was a motorcycle rider back then. I loved it. Probably the peak of my anger and my angry adulthood. But yeah, I suppose there's a certain person, it takes a certain person to ride bikes. But anyways, fast forwarding, I fell off my bike going 75 miles an hour one time, and I high-sided, which means that you're riding and the bike flips you over the bike instead of you sliding with the bike. So it launched me 75, and luckily I had full gear on. I feel like my backpack and my rain gear that was in my backpack saved my back. Plus the padding underneath it, plus the pads I had all over. My gear saved my life. I rolled 50 feet maybe, and this was on the highway, the fast lane in California. So you're in the number one lane of a row of 6. You're in the fast lane. And I was just waiting. After tumbling over, I was just waiting there. I landed on my, on my face like this. And I was just waiting for a car. But that felt like forever. And then all of a sudden someone just like taps me. Hey, you good? Like, they said don't move. They said don't do this and that. But I stood up. That was dumb. But what's more dumb is, well, the medics came and we're on the highway still. Firefighter does my vitals, and ambulance is there ready to take me to the hospital. I denied everything because I'm a poor college student with no health care or anything. $500 bill, like that kind of broke me afterwards. I'm like, really? Why? $500 just for them? So someone else called 911? I didn't want this. I didn't ask for this. But ever since then, I still haven't had any problems with my back or my knees or anything. Has some road rash here and there. So that was crazy.
Yeah.
And then the second time, after all of that, I ended up buying an even faster bike, a bike that was twice as fast. Eventually took that to Vegas. This time I low-sided off of luckily it was a small portion of the hill, but we were at the top of a mountain in Vegas. And my bike, like, I was going through a curve. I saw some gravel. I fixated on it. My bike slid. I slid with it, low side this time. But yeah, luckily we're in the mountains. That could have been easily a cliff, but luckily it was just a ditch. My bike slid into the ditch. I slid with it. And yeah, by the grace of God, that bike was intact. Maybe some plastic was off. And I walked away from that too. I rode away from that that accident. And I rode back home, Las Vegas to California. No medic, no nothing.
Yeah, it's pretty wild.
Yeah.
Kind of also just reiterates, like, you know, we're here with God's grace on God's timing. You know, like, I don't know. For me, I always believe, like, when it's your time, it's your time. When it's not, it's not. Because it's not, we can try to, you know, try to manipulate it all we want in the earthly realm, right? But we're on his time. And so we just really have to just give him thanks and praise each and every day for always watching over us and allowing us to live out another day on this side of the realm, you know.
Yeah, we have strong guardian angels because I don't know how many life or death experiences you've had, but yeah, for me,
it wasn't as risky growing up.
Well, it was risky because you started dating a guy that loved camping, and like on the second date, goes out to the middle of the wilderness and goes camping with him.
Oh, well, yeah, I've reflected on that. That was sketchy. You know, that could have definitely ended poorly. That's kind of like how scary movies happen, you know, but I don't know. For me, I've always just relied, even whenever I wasn't like deep into the faith and into the religion, I always relied on my intuition. And being a baptized Catholic, that's the Holy Spirit. I mean, regardless, even if you walk away from the faith, like, you know, like, you already have the Holy Spirit with you, right? Like, isn't that how that works? So, plus you have your guardian angel. And so I think, like, you know, once you're a baptized Catholic, it's like you have access to those things. So, you know, I always just, like, from the secular perspective, I always just call it my intuition. But who knows? It could have been my guardian angel. It could have been, you know, the Holy Spirit trying to lead me in the right direction, steer me away in those moments, or guide me on the right path. But yeah, because I never got, like, when we started dating, I never got, like, the impression, like, yes, I did think about, like, logic, like, oh, well, you know, that might be not a good idea. But, like, my intuition didn't tell me otherwise. So I chose to follow it. Now, there have been other times where I was more so like, I was just going with the flow out of fear. Like, we were in Kentucky and I jumped into that man's van.
That's different. That was the same exact story, but literally with somebody
with a real
we
stranger.
Just met. So
yeah, that was sketchy.
Yeah, I'm wrenching underneath the Jeep in Kentucky, and my car is just, one of the cylinders is misfiring, and I'm trying to, I was trying to change the starter because I couldn't start my car. Like,
yeah, we were stuck in Kentucky. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm underneath the car. She's just waiting in the passenger seat. It's starting to pour rain. This guy comes to help us in a white van, and before you know it, he's making small talk. I'm still underneath the car. We acknowledge him as a friend, but it went from 0 to 100 real quick when he said, "Hey, it's lunchtime. You guys got to get something to eat. Have you eaten, darling?" I'm like, "No." Well, you're like, "No," but I'm like still wrenching. I'm not thinking twice about it. It's like, let's go to McDonald's. I'll take you. And you went. I'm still wrenching. We didn't think about this until like afterwards.
Yeah, and in the moment, no, I thought about it in the moment, but again, that's why I said I was just acting out, like just going with the flow out of fear, I guess, because like in that moment, I remember thinking like, you know, I'm like in a weird situation. This like older man is like talking to me, trying to get me to go get food with him, and I didn't feel comfortable speaking up for myself in that moment, which, you know, now I feel like I would just be like, no, sorry, like stand my ground, you know, like I'm not doing that. But, you know, I wasn't in that headspace back then. So like, I was just like, oh, like, I don't know what to do. I just felt awkward. And I was like, hoping that you would speak up and like intervene. But then you were, you know, and I'm not putting the blame on you at all, but it was just a moment. Like the moment was just like one of those things. And you were like wrenching and like, you know, working on that. And so I was just like, I remember in that moment, I was just like, well, okay, I'm going to just go with it, I guess. And, I got in the van and I just I did say another prayer. I said a prayer when I got in the van and I did little oh, wait, I think I forgot. And I tried to open the door and make sure there wasn't child's lock on it. And there wasn't. So I was like, okay, and then I was just like, well, Jesus, take the wheel. Literally, that's what happened. It turned out that he was a really nice guy.
Yeah, you came back.
I came back alive and well.
God,
May God bless him, truly, because
yeah,
he really was. He was a father himself, and he was just telling me about his children and his journey. And
well, for a Dominican, Puerto Rican, and a Filipino to get stuck in the middle of Kentucky, near land between the lakes, frickin', redneck country.
Oh, but the hospitality in that town was amazing.
But when you think of it in your
what people like to stereotype, right? Yeah. People like to stereotype places.
It sounds bad, but that was one of the best vacations that we've ever had. Just because of the experience of the culture and face to face with the people that were there. Men of God. Everyone was a man and woman of God.
Yeah.
Even the weird, angry people, they were in the gas station, they're yelling all over the place, but it's all right, have a good day. Freaking, New York energy, but in the middle of Kentucky, and then but still with love and God's grace. That was for us, we were still faithless, and that was we acknowledged it. It was the best.
I'm going to say faithless, though.
Well, we weren't practicing that.
Yeah. But to me, if you say you have no faith, you don't believe in God, period. You have no faith. Well, and I can't say I've ever had a moment in my life where I didn't believe in God. I've always believed in God. For me, it was just more so I never had a deep connection and acknowledgement of Jesus as our Lord and Savior. That was my problem. Even as a Protestant, that was one of my struggles that I've overcome since then. But
yeah,
I can't say I've ever not believed in God.
I can, because I was wrestling with, do I really want to believe in God? Or I'm an engineer. Why don't I just believe in the Big Bang? Why don't I just believe in science? That seems like more of the logical path. It's just believe in science, you're good.
I'm in science as well. My background is STEM. And for me, I just feel both have always coexisted for me. Because there are things in science that we cannot explain. Even to this day, there's things that happen all the time in science and in medicine, and we can't explain it. And in those moments, I feel it's because it's divine intervention. And that's why we can't explain it.
That one cell, have you seen that cell? It looks like the cross.
Oh, yeah, I saw that,
the molecular...
I gotta look that up, though. I gotta fact check that, because I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't trust everything I see on the internet these days.
It's kind of funny, though. No, I mean, it's... those coincidences aren't always coincidences. I've had Tim Tebow on my feed recently, and I learned about his 316 game. You know the story about that?
No.
Well, quick, because he had a college game where he wore 316 on his face. The black stuff on his face, and it's supposed to call back to John 316. They were in the playoff game before the finals, before the Super Bowl, and they won. And he wins. And he was praising God. He was so thankful. But then someone on his team or someone on his PR team takes him aside. He's like, do you know what actually happened? Tim's like, no. All of his stats pointed to 316 or 31.6. The PR rate, the ratings of that game were 31.6 of the night. 90 million people searched John 3:16 that night. His whole stat sheet was just a row of 3:16. And he was like, oh my goodness. And he was about to praise himself for everything he did, but God was like, his testimony was God was like, I did this.
Yeah.
You should probably praise me a little bit more.
No room.
But I don't know exactly the story, but that was like
The gist of it.
legit. That was pretty cool.
Yeah, that is really cool. And it's a good reminder too. Like, that's something that, I've been reading in the Bible in a year stuff that I'm covering now. Like, nothing that we do is something that we do of our own accord. Like, everything needs to be praise to God, thanks to God for that happening. Like, I feel like we live in a world, in a society right now where like people really like to, oh, if I work really hard, I'm going to achieve this and this and this. And it's all because I did it. Right. It's people like to feel that sense of accomplishment that they did it. But really, no, it wasn't you that did it. God helped you do it by his grace. Right. And same applies to our life. I feel like, there are moments where me looking back and I'm like, okay, how did I do? Like, for instance, how did I get through PA school? Right. And I'm like, even now I look back and I'm like, I don't know how I did it, but I'm like, it was by the grace of God. Like, I'm like a grandma. Like, I can barely stay up past like 9 o'clock. And somehow I was able to stay up as late as I need to stay up to study and, make sure that I was well prepared for the exams and the tests and, trying to absorb as much knowledge as I could. And we somehow did it. And I think it really was, I know that God was with me each step of the way during that process.
Yeah. Thank goodness. Thank God.
Mm-hmm.
Come a long way.
Mm-hmm. It's just the beginning.
Yep.